Ross is with us now. How are you, man?
Hey, buddy, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we appreciate the time. All right, reaction to what the Saints did with the two moves they make.
Yeah, I think that they needed to make moves. I had made the argument that they needed to make multiple moves today here ahead of the trade deadline. They got that done. They've gone from having 11 selections over the course of the next two drafts to now being back to having 14. And they could potentially have an additional one coming their way if they don't have Isaac Adam hit the field much more for the rest of the season. They could get that fourth-round compensatory selection from Paulson Adebo. I think that the return on the Rashid Shaheed deal is fair. I think that the return that the Saints got on Trevor Penning, a 2027 sixth-round pick, was not enough, or I guess was less than I expected. Let me say it that way. Anything that you can get back for Trevor Penning was probably a good move for New Orleans. But, man, getting a sixth-round pick next, a year later just felt like a little bit of a low return for a starting offensive line.
Let's talk about Shaheed. So they get they send Shaheed to Seattle for a 4 and a 5. Make sense of this deal and why it makes sense for New Orleans.
Yeah, look, it's tough in terms of the sentimental value of losing a guy like Rashid Shaheed, who was, I'll happily say, like one of the nicest guys in the locker room and was an absolute playmaker on the field as well. Just kind of checked all the boxes of star potential in the NFL. But in order to get value, you have to give value. And so the Saints moved a player that was on an expiring contract, that there was no guarantee that he would re-sign with the team and that he would potentially look to hit the open market this offseason. With that, the Saints got effectively good value back. I think getting a fourth and a fifth gives you a pretty good return based on the fact that the Jacoby Myers trade earlier in the day was for a fourth and a sixth. You came in above the market at the position, and at most you're probably going to get a fourth-round pick all by itself a year from now when it came to potential compensatory selection if he would have gone up and signed elsewhere. And so the Saints kind of beat the market on both of those sides. They get a fourth-round pick this year, but then they add the fifth-round pick as well. Those are rounds where the Saints can find some talent, and also those are selections that the team can use to move around in the draft as well to go and get the guys that they might be targeting.
So, Ross, just to clarify, was there not a sense that Shaheed was looking to re-sign with the Saints this offseason, or the Saints weren't going to be willing to pay market value?
I think that there was some mutual interest in returning. There hadn't been many conversations that took place between the team and Shaheed up to this point, which might have been a little bit of a signifier of understanding that they could potentially come to this point at the trade deadline. But whether or not a deal was going to be reached in between would have come down to when those negotiations actually began. The thing is that the talks hadn't really started. And so either the team was open to the opportunity of potentially moving him at the trade deadline and was looking for the opportunity there, wanted to leave the door open for it, or they would have gotten to the end of the season and then started the conversations there. And then at that point, there's no guarantee that anything would have reached an agreement. And so this way, the Saints get better than what they would have gotten had a deal not been reached in the offseason.
Let's talk about Penning. So if you get a 2027 sixth-round pick for a guy that was a first-rounder, why do you do the deal?
Yeah, it feels like, it's the way that I said it on Locked On Saints today was, if I'm your server, I'd rather you not tip me than tip me $1. You know what I mean? Go to hell with that. I don't want it. You know what I mean? And so, to me, that's kind of what that felt like. And it's I
keep
get
your
it,
stinking
you know
dollar, a-hole. I don't want your dollar.
Take
You
it
need
home.
it more than me.
It. Yeah, clearly. I'm good. But, man, I don't know. On that one, I was just kind of like, wow, really a future six for a guy that, and not just the guy that they drafted in the first round, but a guy that they traded first, second, third, and seventh round picks in years after in order to be able to get that second, that pair of first round picks that went to drafting him and wide receiver Chris Olave. So there's all of this other sort of ancillary value that's tied up in that draft pick as well. And so it just kind of felt like the Saints didn't really get enough there. But could they have gotten more? Clearly not, because if they could have gotten more, they would have done that. And so my big question, though, is could you have gotten something better than a 2027 six by letting him hit the market? Because I don't think they would have brought him back after this year. If they would have done that and then he would have signed elsewhere, could they have gotten something better than a sixth-round pick? We see guards get overpaid in the NFL all the time, season after season, because the position doesn't have a lot of talent across the league. And so that was the part that was a little bit shocking to me.
I mean, Trevor Penning and Andrews Pete were starting guards in the league for less. Cesar Ruiz is still a starting guard in the NFL despite not being good at his job. So, yes, it is hard to find sometimes starting guards in the NFL. Ross Jackson's with us. As you heard him say, Locked On Saints, podcast, YouTube, and, of course, you can read him over at louisianasports.net. Okay, Ross, with no Shaheed and no Penning, the two starters, where do the Saints turn for the final 8 games of the year?
Yeah, so at wide receiver, this is a perfect opportunity for the Saints to finally really start to get Devon Vele involved in their offense. He has gotten 10 targets so far this season, despite the Saints giving up a 4th and a future 7th to get him here to New Orleans at the beginning of the offseason. And so to get him out on the field now is a huge opportunity for the Saints to be able to evaluate what it is that they spent some draft capital on earlier on in the offseason. So I think that he'll become a big part of it. I'll be curious to see how Mason Tipton also gets maybe more involved as a field stretcher along with Chris Olave. And then we'll see, too, there's always a chance that Trey Palmer can come off of injured reserve. So they have some of these options at wide receiver. But the thing that I'm most highlighting for New Orleans when it comes to that position is the opportunity to get a full evaluation on Devon Vele and actually get him involved in the offense and on the field. At offensive line, I think this is easy. They go straight to Dylan Radins. The Saints started Dylan Radins the first 3 games before Trevor Penning was ready to go at the beginning of the season. Remember, he was dealing with the injury to open up the year, and so he missed the first 2 games. And 2 of those 3 games where Dylan Radins was the starter, this team went up against good rushing defenses in Arizona and San Francisco and ran for over 100 yards. Since Trevor Penning's been the starter, they had the 100-yard rushing game up against the Buffalo Bills, who were the penultimate, like one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL during that game, have not rushed for 100 yards since then. So I'll be very interested to see if Dylan Radins is the missing piece to that category, to see if the Saints maybe get better blocking out of Dylan Radins in the run game, which would then support their young quarterback.
Was there anybody not traded who you thought would be?
There were a lot of options in terms of players that could be traded. You mentioned Cesar Ruiz earlier, linebacker Pete Werner, another veteran guy like Isaac Yiadom. Of course, there was a lot of conversation around Chris Olave, Carl Granderson, and others. Like, there were a lot of players that were, kind of tied into trade rumors and trade talks and things like that. However, I didn't think the Saints were going to make a single move today, if I'm being entirely honest. I thought they were going to strike out. And so to see them go up there and get any moves done, to me, that is the highlight. Otherwise, if they would have come out and they would have not made any moves, that would not have been shocking to me at all. And look, they got the Trevor Penning one in at the buzzer, right as the trade deadline was ending up. So they almost walked away with only 1 move getting done. I think them getting 2 moves done, 3 picks in, that's a good day for the Saints here at the trade deadline.
He is Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints and louisianasports.net. Anything else I'm missing?
No, not at this point. I mean,
Okay.
This is the biggest thing is just going to be now where things go when it comes to the Saints utilizing those draft picks. That's what everything's going to be about now from here on forward. Getting the evaluation on Devon Vele is going to tell you a lot. Figuring out if maybe Dylan Radins can be a guy that's a part of their future, that's going to be a big part. But how they utilize those draft picks and what they do with them is going to tell the rest of the story around these moves.
How do you get an evaluation on Tyler Shuck with this offensive line and trading away your best offensive weapon? I mean, bro, this is it'll feel a lot like Spencer Rattler a year ago, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, look, Spencer Rattler went through something very similar. Yeah, I would say to an even further extent, and he came away out of that feeling like, and having given the team enough confidence to be willing to roll with him a new regime the next year. There's no telling. I mean, look, here's the one thing. If Tyler Shuck pans out, there will be no question marks around it, right? Like, you'll know. It'll be obvious if he's going to work in this scenario and in this situation. And who knows, maybe Devon Vele gives the Saints a little bit of an element that they weren't able to take advantage of, a little bit more in the intermediate area as opposed to all this, short game or, when they can't get the deep hit. And then maybe they get better play out of their offensive line. Maybe there's an addition by subtraction kind of a situation here. So there are areas where this could work out. But if Tyler Shuck does pan out, there'll be no confusion about it. It'll be obvious.
I just love that you're an eternal optimist, Ross. We all should be more like that. He is Ross Jackson. louisianasports.net is where you can read him. You can listen or watch to the Locked On Saints podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, bud. Take care. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.